matchup. Afrika Freaks, SK Telecom T1. AT Rolster, Hongdu Monsters. Beginning of the end. 2018 League of Legends Champions Korea Spring Split.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to LCK Spring 2018. I'm still Atlas, this is still Papa Smithy, and today we have some incredible games for us.
First one especially, SKT versus Afrika, the only squad in the history of Korean League of Legends to actually hold a winning record against SKT, and it's an organizational thing. It's not Mickey and friends anymore, it's not even Marin in the top lane, but still Afrika has always had their nose in front of SKT, but history has meant very little. In 2018, a lot of historic records have been broken. CS records, SKT's longest losing record, but that's a thing of the past. Best storyline about today, the last matches they lost, the last match loss was against Afrika. Since then, SKT, a 4-match win streak, and since then, some roster changes for Afrika today as well. So it's a hype series, and the winner here, even the fan vote, might be one-sided, but I think every analyst could have a different argument for who will win with SKT versus Afrika.
Yeah, exactly right. Of course, last time we saw Afrika Freaks, it was aiming on the bottom side of the map.
Yep.
Kramer has been a pretty fantastic addition to this team for a long time now. Actually, we were confused as to why he was taken out of the roster, but aiming 17 KDA on Kalista in back-to-back games, absolutely ridiculous stuff. So excited to see whether he's going to be coming back on the roster, but you look over the side of SKT, it's all about Blossom. He's the man with the 4-match winning streak. He's the guy that hasn't lost yet for SKT after they lost 5 matches in a row.
Again, they debuted him after the loss to Afrika, and that's when he started, and they have not lost a match since then. They were right down the bottom of the table, losing to MVP. Now, SKT is in 6th with a match win. They can jump as high as 4th with a 2-0.
Just insane. We thought at the beginning of the season, just after the first round robin finished, that maybe SKT weren't going to make it towards playoffs, and now they're knocking on the door of that playoff spot. And with a faltering KSV and a ROX Tigers that has already lost twice to SKT, could be a difficult one for them to knock SKT out of contention as we move forward. I know playoffs without SKT sounds like something that you would never even dream of, so it feels like the world is reverting back to some normalcy now as they move their way back up the standings.
But normalcy is only a fleeting emotion in spring 2018. We had KG lose to the ROX Tigers 2-0 not a couple of days ago. Starting lineup's going to be very fun to see here, and we can confirm that Aiming will maintain his spot. He will be playing, but there's even more variance to that, Atlas.
Yep, it's all going to get a little bit exciting as we have a look in the jungle role. Mowgli. I know there's a certain jungle book about it, and it makes a whole lot of sense that he'd be jumping in here, but no Spirit for Afrika Freaks this time around, and Aiming going to be stepping into that AD carry position. Everybody else is exactly as you know. Tucson, the king of MVPs for support, still down there on the bottom side, and we'll see whether that synergy that he had with Aiming in their last outing is going to be still there.
But it's very intriguing to see Mowgli brought in. Good in Challenger, very, very high in the top 100, but he has not played a single game this season. Definitely saw much more play in 2017, but the only other sub they had brought in is Aiming. Kane also will be in a great spot here. He's against another top laner he's played a couple of times before on the red side. SK Telecom T1, no changes from the team that beat ROX Tigers last week.
Yep, this is the squad that does look like the most successful here for SKT so far, and Antara going to remain up there. Recently, his performances have actually been fantastic. The last few in there, like he went from kill-death ratio of 1-11 in the first few games, and then 7-2 over the last series.
But of course, that is a true recency bias. One series he came back after being out of the squad for a long time. Tal was preferred for, I believe, 4 to 5. Best of 3s. In comes Antara. I agree. Great performance against ROX. He jumped on the Jax top lane for the first time this season in a skill matchup, and this time wasn't just farming. Actually was able to be aggressive. He will maintain his spot. Great interview where he said, hey, I'm trying to play it simpler. I just want to play for the lane. I don't want to think about the level of expectation on me. Expectation on both teams here is going to be sky high. SKT can go fourth with a victory. Afreeca Freecs want to go 2-0 this week after, of course, their 0-2 week in week number 5.
Yeah, and it was a bit of a heartbreaking loss against Kingzone as well for the Afreeca Freecs, coming back against KSV, but I feel like that was a lot to do with KSV faltering rather than Afreeca Freecs looking fantastic on that particular day. So we'll see whether they can actually turn it around and have a dominating win here against SKT when, as you mentioned before, they've normally had their number.
Speaking of numbers, Bang still
Bang's
off
got
the
a big
charts.
one. That is a gigantic number. Top of the KDA at the moment in the league at 9.5, and we'll see whether he can actually extend that one here this series.
On a team with a losing streak, to have less than a death a game is pretty insane, and he's not necessarily been any sort of a KDA player. I think he has been very consistent as Ezreal, probably the most famous of the picks. Tucson already having a great season as well. Has fallen away a little bit. And Kramer and Tucson as a duo were struggling in the 2v2 the last 2 sets they played together. Yeah. So rolling the dice with aiming, I don't think his laning phase was necessarily anything to talk about. But they're going for it, and this is what we're talking about. Organizational rivalry. Afreeca Freecs the only one to have a more than 50% win rate against SKT.
Yeah, and even when you look back in 2017 where SKT were dominant throughout the regular season, that one victory, I guarantee they were game ones. Back when Afreeca Freecs were known for being dominant in that particular game. Doesn't matter who they're playing against, they'll win game one.
And of course the wildcard match when SKT had to run the entire gauntlet to get to the final where they eventually lost to Longzhu was an SKT 2-0. But when it matters, SKT so often come out ahead. And this man debuted in the series after their 2-0 loss to the Afreeca Freecs. And since then, Blossom, in match score, has not lost. Super aggressive, despite the fact that he's going with a very meta champion pool. Very, very admirable to see a young player, true rookie, no competitive experience, never even been on an extended squad, come in and do so well. And also for SKT to play around him in such a manner.
Yeah, and you can see in the stats as well that this guy likes to go in. Damage taken per minute at 955. The guy is ridiculously good at getting in there, but also does a lot of damage as well, indicating, you know, second in damage per minute as well for junglers.
On a simple level, it means he's fighting all the time.
Exactly.
He's definitely getting in there and being aggressive. Mid lane matchup, one of our historic LCK matchups.
Oh, yes.
Always been Kuro versus Faker. It was a very one-sided narrative for the first couple of years on Rox Tigers. Faker was always the reason that Rox fell when it came to actually beating SKT. But on Afreeca, Kuro has been unshackled a little bit. He's been able to play more for himself. They have a similar champion pool over the course of spring 2018. But this rivalry is getting more interesting. We can actually focus on the 1v1 and not just have Kuro kind of having to play the team champion. He can actually play for lane.
Yeah, and if you're talking about organizational rivalries as well, I mean, this is one of the most fun matchups because when Kuro was on Rox, they couldn't beat SKT. Nope. But now he moves over to the Afreeca Freecs and they continue to have that winning record against the team. This is certainly going to be the SKT fan vote. The fans out in force at the moment. We don't see vote numbers that high all that often.
Yeah, we surfaced the fan votes for the smaller games like Junior BBQ. We're getting 2,500 votes. We have almost 10,000 here for SK Telecom versus Afreeca. SKT, by far the biggest fan base of any team in the world, I would say, but in Korea, no different. Fans are feeling it. The confidence is there for SKT. Can they go on a 5-match winning streak to match their 5-match losing streak? Or will they be held by an Afreeca team that did seem top 2 not a week ago?
Yeah, and you also have to look at the opposition that they've had over the last 4 matches at the same time. It was BBQ, KSV, Kongbu Monster, and Rox. 2 of those series were actually 2-1 victories as well, so relatively close stuff. We'll see whether this can be the first time that they've broken into that top 4 as far as picking up these wins. As we head into Champions Select, Varus going to be the first ban against Bang, which is quite interesting.
Usually when you see a Varus ban on blue side in the LCK, it's suggesting a first pick into the Xayah and Xayah Rakan on blue side, and not wanting to give away something like Varus Braum that can have lane control in a very powerful fashion. So will SKT ban one of Xayah or Rakan? On the red side, they might try to leave Kalista open to take Kalista Rakan and interrupt the Xayah. That's kind of the game plan right now. It's very bot lane centric in the first round.
Yeah, and very telegraphed as well by Afreeca. They could have saved that Varus ban to the end, and then SKT would have been forced to think about banning that Kalista unless they had a different plan. But we'll see whether Afreeca Freecs do have some sort of sneakiness up their sleeve. It's Camille and Gangplank, two theoretically top lane bans coming in at Keen.
But now the headaches start because, okay, you ban Kalista on blue side, say, yup, Xayah Rakan, but then Galio could be left open to get the Xayah Rakan. There's a lot of power picks
left
that would fall onto the red
on
side.
The Rift. Like, this is hard.
They will ban the Azir, so we're baiting really hard here for Afreeca. Maybe the Galio is even higher priority for them, given that they seem to be setting up for Xayah Rakan, but SKT can just go for a ban that leaves them a very strong red side 2 picks, whatever Afreeca decides. So it's very interesting to me to see which way SKT go. They're against Mowgli and Aiming, so of course there's a lot less competitive games to draw information from, and they'll ban the Sejuani. So
that's what Mowgli's been spamming in solo queue at the moment.
Will SKT get Xayah Rakan? Well, we see a Kalista pick here into it. There's lots of different things that can happen on the Rift here. The first pick is not certain when you have a lot of power available.
Yeah, I feel like Galio's standing out as the first pick, and Afreeca are going to hover it here. But I feel if SKT then answer with Kalista Rakan,
then Xayah something. It's not going to be on the same level.
But they do deny the Xayah almost completely from that pick, and the Varus is already banned away. They are going to prioritize the jungle, though, as the Skarner comes in for Blossom.
We'll see what SKT want to do here. They'll take the Kalista, so they seem happy to give up Xayah Rakan if that's what Afreeca want. Getting the Skarner is a pretty fearsome weapon. We saw Blossom and even Peanuts' first game on this champion very recently has jumped up the priority in Korea, so it looks like a pick comp being put together by SKT. Afreeca Freaks. Xayah Rakan expected here, but they're taking a lot of time to consider their options.
Yeah, I feel like Xayah Rakan's a bit of a no-brainer at this point. It's funny, though, considering the fact that Kramer was the resident Xayah player for this team and was actually fantastic on the pitch.
And I actually don't agree that it was necessarily completely mindless here, because there's a lot of different ways you can approach this draft. With the Galio, I guess you're priced in. You don't need to take a mid laner in this round and be denied there. But it's what they set up for earlier. They'll feel like they got a bonus to get the Galio and the Xayah Rakan. But SKT have left a lot open. Could even pick a top laner here and start banning against. But I imagine mid lane to answer the Galio is the way they're going to look. They don't have the Azir. Corki will be the farm lane. And they will go for the Corki. So some scaling coming through in the mid lane for Faker.
Yeah, I also like the Corki matchup into the Galio as well. Feels pretty free. You can get to those 2 items pretty fast without too much of a hiccup. But Afreeca will have a lot of tools to work around the map in skirmishes from about the 11-minute mark forward.
So SKT may start the jungle bans now, and support is the role that Afreeca have drafted the SKT if not. So support and top lane pulls might start to constrict. If you're looking at Untara, his effective champion pull this season is 2. It's been the Gnar and the Jax. The Jax a counter pick. The Gnar will be the blind pick. I wonder if we'll see Afreeca ban away the Gnar, if Keen is happy to go into a farm lane. And actually SKT will ban it, suggesting perhaps they just want a red side counter pick, and Gnar's safety in lane might just mean that they don't want that to be the blind pick on blue side. So that's my read on Gnar being banned here by SKT.
And they've also banned Keen's top 3 champions. I mean, you look at Ryze and you think that that's a mid lane ban, but it's not. So on the bench are 3 of Keen's champion picks.
Chances of Sion goes up in this game, Atlas.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be honest.
Oh, no. Please don't tell me we're looking at Sion versus Ornn.
But then Mowgli would have to go a damage jungler, otherwise you might have damage concerns on blue side. So SKT with the Gnar ban will be taking support as the first pick on red side.
Tahm Kench and Kalista, certainly a decent duo. Gives a lot of safety if they're going to have to try and weather the storm of the power in lane of Xayah Rakan. And they are going to lock away the Catfish.
So how does Afreeca find a threat, but also find the ability to find a safe blind pick top lane? Camille has been banned, so there will be no Camille jungle this game to even buff up the Galio engage further. So Sion, the expected blind pick, because we've already seen Untara happy to opt into Jax, so you know that he's willing to actually flex into some of his solo queue picks.
Yeah.
Question here is jungle. Seems like they're going to be going very low threat on the side of Afreeca. They do lock in the Zac. Looking at solo queue, Zac and Sejuani, the meta engaged champions, have been the champion pool for Mowgli this season, known as a Rek'Sai player in the past. And very confident answer on the Sion is the Cho'Gath. I think that banner of command might be returning, Atlas.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, something's got to be able to do damage. You may as well buff up your minions to try and do it. See what is going to happen, because I guess, you know, SKT, they're not too worried about damage. They got the dual threat coming out of the Corki and Kalista, but Afreeca, you're exactly right. It's a bit worrying.
For the side of SKT, as this game goes on, their scaling is even better than it might first appear when you see a Corki mid lane that's probably going to go into the Cull and try to farm. Consider that in team fights, we know that Cho'Gath fights very well front to back because he just feasts the nearest tank.
Yeah.
You actually take them down much faster, and the value of having multiple tanks against a farmed Cho'Gath goes down. Galio especially is going to have some ability power and a Rod of Ages, and then just get chomped on and will die through all of his damage reduction. So they're looking to fight front to back over time. So how does Afreeca win? They need to pile in there. Sion needs to respond first. Very good on the roam in the early game. Galio needs no introduction. This needs to be a pretty proactive game from the side of Afreeca. Otherwise, for multiple reasons, I think that SKT have the scaling advantage.
Yeah, you have to look at the mid game here for Afreeca. The team composition does work out extraordinarily well on that sort of 1.5 item spike for the Xayah, I guess.
Yep.
I mean, it's the closest thing you can get to an early game spike, and then you've got the hero's entrance, you've got the Let's Bounce to really get things happening, and Sion can just choo-choo train his way in and try and start a fight.
But then the damage falls off a cliff.
Yeah,
so
it
very
does.
much, guys, look at the clock. See how much Afreeca can do early, and it's with a sub. Spirit's not in the roster. Can they pull it off?
Yep, this is going to be a rough one. Afreeca Freaks throwing the gauntlet at SKT, looking to continue their winning streak. We'll see how they go as we get onto the Rift. Yes, it's most of the audience going to be SKT fans. Blossom setting himself up on the lawnmower as well as we have a look at all of those SKT banners flying in the crowd.
We definitely have a fully sold out day here. You would have seen some empty seats. Unfortunately, because it is 5 p.m. and kind of a remote part of Seoul, very difficult for all our fans to get here for game one.
Yeah.
But whenever we see fans in what are usually the seats that are cordoned off for press, it lets you know that we have a full house expected here for what should be a fiery series. 3 games would be epic between Afreeca and SKT.
Yep, hoping for it. As you say that, we had fans actually filtering in as well, getting here a little bit late, but it's difficult to get off work and stuff like that.
And look, they might think we're covering. Wait for the game 2 fan chats. They will be a lot more epic. I'll let you guys decide the decibels on that one.
Yeah, especially considering, you know, whether SKT are going to win or not. I just feel like as soon as we're coming off anything, whether it be a loss or a win, it's going to be a little bit more loud as Faker continuing to play up in lane. Has sort of been his MO. He's trying to do his best to carry his squad. We'll see whether he's going to be able to continue the trend that he's had against Kuro in the past, which has been a good news story for the best player in the world.
And this is such a clean game in terms of draft identity. I love games like this where you can see where each team is strongest and where each team will start to fall away. Afreeca are very gated on how their early to mid game goes. They got first roam in top lane and the mid lane. And then, as you say, Xayah Rakan, when it comes to 2 items, when it comes to the Essence Reaver into a Zeal item and the first item Zeke's Convergence we see out of every Rakan player in recent memory, that is when this team will be strong. So when they can outnumber before all the scaling comes through from the side of SKT. But SKT strongest in the mid to late game. So when you have clear identities, I think it's very easy for everyone involved to evaluate and reevaluate how the game is going. But it's a lot of pressure onto Afreeca. If you need to do things early, any sort of bad trade like Keen just took with Cho'Gath hitting level 2 first is something that has to be looked at and really considered, and then how it fits into the overall narrative.
Yeah, Keen actually getting really bullied up towards the top side, having to chug through this Corrupting Potion down to 1 charge
Blossom's going to find the power farm here from Mowgli.
Yeah, actually going to set up the Crystal Spire, but Kuro's going to turn up.
Very
Blossom
early.
Yeah, bullied out.
Yeah, went very early there, did Kuro, just to try to stop the power farm. If they releash on 2 camps, you've lost basically all your health for no gain, so definitely needed that. Most junglers will not go the route that Mowgli did, where he took the Raptors on the way. Usually they just go for red into 2 camps on the top side. When a more greedy solo queue route, maybe even just to next level to next level, because you expect people to go 2 camp into the blue, but regardless, ends up getting away with it after Kuro came with a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, so as the Zac, you generally expect them to be fairly far behind in the early game, so Mowgli doing absolutely okay at this point in time, and he has to, because they need to get things done as quickly as possible.
But Mowgli coming in is not just a one and done, because we have to remember that the shot calling for Afreeca Freecs has been so much stronger than we expected in spring season after losing Marin, who was another layer onto why this was such a hype matchup in 2017. But with Mowgli in the roster, their shot calling spirit is not there. So who is picking up the shot calling slack? You'd imagine Tucson is involved. Kuro would probably have to shoulder a lot of it. And when you're on Galio, you kind of invite shot calling in the early to mid game because it's all about the use of the hero's entrance, the global. But it's something different from Afreeca, and the time has to really be looked at closely. It's against SKT in what is a very important match for deciding where the top 5 lie halfway into, you know, the last month of the season. And so it's very surprising to see Mowgli in the roster instead of Spirit.
Yeah, you see Kuro actually going back and picking up the blasting one to start things off. Often you see Catalyst being picked up, and then they can consider whether or not to go into things like the Abyssal Mask or whether it's going to be the Rod of Ages. Definitely Rod of Ages here for Kuro this time, and wants to have as much lane push as possible as Tucson has to battle dance his way out, but gets rendered on the way through. SKT with a huge health lead here on the bottom side.
And taking a blasting one won't lead to a health lead in the mid lane, but it's like you say, first rotation, first push into level 6 being proactive. His brief this game is be aggressive. You need to be there to snowball it early, so I like the blasting one in the context of that.
Yeah, I really like it. Kuro understanding his role, and always has in these matchups against Faker. It's not anything about the laning phase. Kuro, he's been solo killed by Faker enough times in his career to know, let's just not try and go for this.
So many famous matchups. The Master Yi into Azir by Faker, that was against Kuro. Kuro's Azir.
He's like Faker's punching bag.
He is, and his Azir was the biggest kind of Bronx cheer you'll get from anyone. That was the pick that he struggled on the most, but this season it's been a dominant pick for him, 4-1 on Azir, and drawing Azir bans pretty frequently. So it's a bit opposite week, an opposite day in the LCK in 2018, and Kuro's Azir, actually something to respect.
Oh, it is. Certainly now. Faker as well. I mean, the reason why Afreeca were the team to ban it away was that Faker just came off back-to-back victories on the champion against the Rox Tigers in what was theoretically a surprising win, because Rox were certainly making a resurgence.
This time, we've seen the second time we're seeing the Cho'Gath into Sion matchup going a lot better for the Cho this time. Can play very aggressively topside. And Untara has really improved. If you watched earlier games in the season, you would see Untara pick for lane and then play passively, pick a counter matchup and allow a farm lane for the scaling top laner. He had a lot of problems. He and Blank were both struggling very heavily during the loss streak. It's a time away from the team. If we're just evidenced by his Rox Tigers performance, he was very aggressive in the Jax matchup. Picked for lane, played to lane, and definitely wasn't wearing the same kind of very worn kind of expressions he was showing when you could see that clearly the mental toll of being on a losing SKT team with all the attention from the fans was something that was really bringing him down.
Yeah, the expectation seemed to have been a real problem for Untara, but having a bit of a break and having Tal there just to give him some extra motivation seems to have helped out.
I think seeing Blossom as well, Atlas,
true.
Because Blossom has come in and done the opposite. He's been absolutely able to play the competitive scene as if it is just solo queue. He has been super aggressive. He has been decisive. He's made mistakes, but then he jumps back on the horse and does it again, which he needs to do. And I think that's the sort of thing where if you're Untara, you see that and you say, maybe I can take that approach too. And only a one-match sample size, but a lot better from Untara in that match.
Oh, yeah. Well, now the Afreeca Freecs struggling a little bit here towards the bottom side of the map. Bang, of course, one of the best Kalista players in the world. That's why he has his own skin, and he's wearing it right now. Faker going to pick up the blue buff pretty easily, but Mowgli's hanging around trying to get some vision down. A little bit late if you wanted to actually catch them doing the blue buff, but knows exactly where Blossom is.
I mean, look at some of the summoners. We haven't spoken about them. Mostly pretty standard. Both the supports. Plenty of playmaking. Abyssal Voyage and also the Unsealed Spellbook coming through. The Wolf, the Predator Skarner, very standard in Korea. It's going to be Grasp for the Cho'Gath, so doubling down on winning those laning trades.
Yeah, I actually personally like a bit of Comet on my Cho'Gaths, but I like this one, making sure that he can stay healthy against Kayn.
It's a bit surprising to me that Kayn has gone for the Q-Max. We do see that on Glacial Augment much more than Comet, where you go there for the E-Harass, but we've actually seen Glacial Augment choice into Roar of the Slayer Max just because there's so many interrupts on the enemy team. Untara has 2 abilities to interrupt the Decimating Smash, and yet it is still a Q-Max from Kayn.
It's still going to work for getting the wave clear that he's looking for, and we saw that even though there was a Rupture available, he was able to get off the queue, clear out the minion wave, and move his way down to get that control ward in the river. Just wants to keep himself as happy as possible and make sure that Kuro's not going to get spotted out.
A nice decisive move from SKT. They're on scuttle vision from the enemy team, but they knew the exact recall time of Zion Rakan bot lane. We knew that the Zac was on the top side, so no contest was going to come in. And even with all the scaling advantage we talk about for SKT, to stay smart read on the map gets them extra scaling through the Infernal.
Yeah, and I think it's actually really interesting to talk about when it comes to scaling in this particular game, because I don't think the Afreeca Freecs necessarily have a lot of scaling up until the mid-game actually hits. When you look at a Galio composition, you need to have that hero's entrance before you really get the priority in the skirmishes around the lane. So SKT actually utilizing the fact that they do have relative power in the very early game, as opposed to the skirmish phase in the mid-game.
It does always get a little bit more technical than just win early.
Yeah.
There's always a bit of an asterisk there. Also the Cho'Gath this time. Of course, has to reevaluate the matchup. He's doing a lot better into Sion in the first couple of times we'd seen that 1v1. So control on the top side. The Galio just pushing in mid and working on his Rod of Ages. You're right, as we crest 10 minutes, as we start to see first item purchases and those ults being readily available, maybe this is where the game will really turn on for the side of Afreeca. But for SKT, their brief is just take every neutral while Afreeca really judge their situation and work out where their first global bouncy castle will be.
Yeah, it's actually really intelligent as far as pathing is concerned from Blossom as well, really capitalizing on the fact that Mowgli's not going to have all of that power until he can get amongst his friends and start off some of these fights. So the Rift Herald should go down relatively easily for the Skarner after that Infernal Drake as well. So really getting so much value if he can find the eye on Shelly's back.
He'll get there. It'll take a bit of time, but he'll work it out.
He's a good Lorpo, this one.
All Mowgli's been able to do is pick up some camps, but not even to the advantage of his team. You'll notice SKT taking away the Gromp, because the moment that you see Rift Herald go down, the smart move for the enemy jungler is to invade bot side and take away camps. SKT doing their own counter jungling of their jungle to stop anything from being stolen away. So Mowgli behinding camps and also losing out in the first Infernal and the Rift Herald in this game.
So Kuro actually noticing Faker moving through the jungle here. Good deep vision for the Afreeca Freecs to make sure that the bottom lane can play as far up as they want. Not going to find the Elastic Slingshot. And aiming with this first buy actually feels fantastic. You know, he's got all of the flat AD he could ever want. Bang still building towards the Blade of the Ruin King, which is going to be where he really starts to spike. And that's exactly what you were talking about there. When the Rupture easily cancels out the Decimating Smash. Is Mowgli, okay. Everyone on Afreeca Freecs just hanging out in SKT's jungle.
They're trying to cause some pressure, because the problem they have is that with no Camille to guarantee the hero's entrance, if the flashes are all up, they're getting away. Tahm Kench is there to disengage the Kalista, and also the Fate's Call, if it is onto the Tahm Kench. Corki hard to pin down. The Cho'Gath already supremely tanky. Even pulling off the first rotation for the Galio is pretty predicated, in my opinion, on there being a summoner advantage. And forcing a summoner for a Zac, possible, level 7, level 9, when the Elastic Slingshot is large enough range. For now, though, thwarted. And SKT happily farming 1,100 gold up just in the laning phase, and an Infernal to their name.
Yeah, and the advantage that we were talking about as well, it makes complete sense that Afreeca were trying to force the issue. But now, Faker goes back, grabs his first power spike in the Trinity Force, and Afreeca Freecs are probably going to think twice before really trying to force some sort of engagement, now that the Corki does have a lot of options as far as getting that damage done.
But they need to force, Atlas. They've priced themselves into forcing with the draft that they have. And that's why the surprise to me was, take away your Shockcaller, taking away Spirit. Noticeably, it's taken Mowgli a bit of time to really pick up the pace here, because he's been away from the competitive scene for a long time, and he's been thoroughly out-jungled in the first 12 minutes by a opposing number in Blossom. So now he's behind, now the engage is looking unreliable. They went for a pretty low-threat jungler. They could have looked for a skirmishing advantage. You definitely could have gotten away with a damage jungler, but just because how the draft came together, this is the eventual reality. And whether it actually suits the playstyle Afreeca have actually gone for, it feels like the draft and the playstyle are pretty disconnected.
Yep, and the Lumberjack is going to make his way towards topside, picks up this minion wave. I know it makes a very dramatic sound, but he's just getting back to farm. It's absolutely fine.
I do love how we have Gangplank and Sion with global announcements of their ult, and neither of them actually being involved in any fighting.
Yeah.
The Gangplank ult on minions, and now the gap close Sion.
Yeah, well, Grand Entrance was used, but doesn't actually get any joy. Bang's able to hop himself out of the way. Devour was, of course, there for Wolf, so had to get both of them. Doesn't manage. Bottom lane thwarted pretty much completely.
And we're also seeing some range from SKT, because if you think about how they've picked up their wins in their 4-match win streak, it's the aggression predicated on Blossom's natural playstyle.
Yeah.
If that was Afreeca's read, that SKT can only win being super decisive with their new roster, it should be no surprise to longtime fans they can play defensive, but this is something different from what SKT have played for a while. Afreeca's comp, if SKT were being brazen in every lane, does have the first response, will win in the 2v2, 3v3, and 4v4 skirmishing early. But SKT read the game just like we did. They know they have a scaling advantage, and they've picked up neutrals, and other than that, just been very content to farm until their comp really kicks in.
Yeah. Now they're going to have that Rift Herald as well to possibly get a cute little headbutt.
And it's at the same time as Infernal comes in, so that's why it was so deep on the Rift. They want to set up for Infernal, have a secondary objective for the Galio to have to respect. It does hit the eye the first time, so at least the first charge isn't going to be massive. It's the sort of thing that can hurry a team having to respect the Rift Herald when the enemy team is only interested in setting up for Infernal.
Also means that Kuro definitely can't get any heroes entrances happening around the rest of the map. And so SKT are free to set up positioning around this Infernal Drake and do so. Mowgli goes down to about half health, as I don't think you'll be able to get a drive-by as this Dragon has been pulled out. He's actually going for it though, as in goes Toussaint, but the Devour right there. Hero's entrance comes down as well, and he steals it! Mowgli, in his debut, going to be able to pick that one up, and Blossom immediately falls down. Afreeca might actually have found the team fight that they're looking for. They grab one kill and the Dragon, so definitely good news, and this is when they were strong and exactly when they wanted to fight.
And predictably, when they went for the knockups, SKT were able to flash away. Blossom stayed, wanting to claim the Infernal to guarantee the scaling as the game went on. Credit to Mowgli. Mechanics do prove that he's able to pick that up. That's the bonus here. A kill for the Infernal would have been fine for SKT. A kill and an Infernal means they played that one supremely suboptimally, and they lose first turret bot side as well.
Yeah, so that's going to be first brick. Keen did use his teleport to get down there though, and Antara held on to his. So he's going to have a lot of options as far as shoving this wave forward, but hasn't got any meaningful turret damage or anything like that. When you're a big dinosaur man, it's a little bit tough to really get up there and eat the turrets against a Sion who wave clears pretty damn well, but he's going to lose a lot of farm. Keen actually looking for this swap. So now the turret's fallen down, Xayah Rakan moving themselves back up, and aiming feeling really great as far as his items are concerned. Very close to grabbing that first Zeal purchase.
And I'm feeling hyped about Kuro's items, because this is the guy who has always kind of been a one-note full tank on the Galio. This time, the Rod of Ages, that part we saw coming. Backing it up with the Proto Belt as well for even more wombo. You cannot use this while you're channeling your W. There is the lockout, but you hit the taunt, you're definitely going to be hitting all of the Proto Belt shots as well. So heavy on the burst. He knows he needs to be a damage carry this game. The tankiness we alluded to, certainly not going to be there outside of the W resists.
Yeah, I think this is actually brilliant as well, because it means that he can spam AP health items if he goes for the Liandry's as his third. So he's actually going to have a whole bunch of his health. Of course, the resist's not necessarily going to be there. He's feeling all right. 7 stacks now on that Rod of Ages as well, so the health bar certainly looking a bit beefy.
Now we have, again, taking the next phase of the game. SKT doing better than we expected in the early game.
Yeah.
But now pressure on Afreeca to keep up the tempo and start taking out these outer turrets. An outer turret lead with globals and also first rotation is something that you always expect. SKT trying to get deep vision. They want to make the Zac predictable. They want to make the hero's entrance play predictable. And if they can just stay in the side lane and just ensure that they're trading farm between aiming and Bang, that's the gold standard for SKT.
Yep. Bang closing in on that Renan's Hurricane as well, is when SKT will start feeling like fighting might be a slightly better idea. But when you see a Proto Belt as well, it really does help out when you're going for these sort of more early style of composition. So Kuro, he's in a great spot to continue fighting. Afreeca need to continue forcing. You mentioned this, we've spoken about it a whole lot, but that's what this game is going to hinge around. The lead is nowhere near enough at this point.
And forcing being required is a very double-edged sword, because sometimes when you're forced to force, you just make these engages with no vision, no deep vision, and you hope for the best. You think, okay, we've got the champions who don't have the vision, maybe it'll be fine. That's where you can be turned around. If you can get the vision control and make the calculated forces, that's when things work a lot better. So for now, vision very shallow, the map being very well split by SKT, very happy to have Antara in the side lane against the Sion in the bot side. So any sort of pile-in outside of the next Drake spawning is seeming like just SKT will not opt into that sort of a fight.
Well, he's not going to be very happy after this next item is completed, Papa, because Cho'Gath does not enjoy Banner of Command minions all that much unless the feast is well and truly available.
But then if you Banner of Command and teleport, do you feast the minion or do you keep the feast for a team fight? It's suddenly a conundrum.
There's not a lot of great answers to your question, Papa.
He is a very specific eater. He has a very delicate palate, does Cho'Gath, so...
We're going to talk about diets again.
We are. We'll see if Cho'Gath's diet is supremely just going to be Banner of Command minions or not.
Yeah, whether it's going to be Gargoyle or Zac, or whether he's actually going to try and get himself into the back line. Pick up any AD carries. Already has that Righteous Glory to start that one off.
First rotation from Galio and Zac. They're looking to take top lane out of turret. Plenty of people from SKT, and they want to force.
Yeah, Fate's Call actually going to come down from SKT to begin this fight, as Kuro does have the option of throwing in the ultimate. Mowgli just going to use the Let's Bounce to get out, and the Winds of War for disengage as well.
And do notice that he actually was able to bait out the Impale, which is now fully on cooldown, because he pressed R as the Impale was being used. Goes untargetable. They get a good cooldown trade there to the side of a Freaky Freaks.
Well, in goes Kuro. Let's get the Valkyrie out of Faker, but he's got a blue buff. He's absolutely fine. No worries there. Throw it down to about half health, and Afrika still putting on the pressure, but that gold lead has not changed.
Not going to return to top side, though. Zac is no longer there. It feels like Zac now has so much more threat than Skarner, with Impale being down. The Zac's natural kit, short of ultimate, I think does out-skirmish a Skarner very heavily. But now Mowgli makes his way back up. And try and rinse and repeat as Sion triumphantly goes back to lead.
Cowards. Towards his turret. Okay. Mowgli charging himself up. Sweet Blossom not actually getting respected so much anymore, but this minion wave going to get decimated. SKT stave them off once again.
And we're about 3,500 gold away from SKT taking these fights. Look at Faker's items. He just finished Rapid Fire Cannon. He has Boots too already. Looking towards his Infinity Edge. And that's when a very AP-centric build from Galio makes Galio just another fairly squishy frontliner. See, line and lane is trolling me, but frontliner just to be killed by Faker. Faker has just farmed, but to the tune of the highest CS in the game. The Cull cashed in. He has the most gold of anyone on the Rift. And not even a Banner of Command in the side lane is going to change that.
Nope, not worried at all. Bang has also picked up the Renan's Hurricane as far as item spikes that we know I love to talk about as often as I possibly can. SKT have a smorgasbord. But Rapid Fire Cannon now done. We mentioned the 2-item spike for aiming is about when they want to be fighting. That minion will not be yelled at. Zara? It's getting more and more difficult because of this gold parity that's happened. Okay, in goes Blossom. Looks for the Righteous Glory speed up.
Top side.
Actually, no. It's Faker. He's in trouble. Tucson goes down extraordinarily low, but it's Faker that does make the disengage.
Tucson uses Summoner, so can't teleport to the Drake. Should be a free one for the side of SKT. Dar didn't use Feast on the minion, so we'll stick onto it. They'll give up a Cloud, which is decent for the side of SKT, but the third Infernal means that I think that first big fight with Faker largely going to be close to an Infinity Edge for it at 38 minutes, 28 minutes I should say, is the one we're going to watch closely, because that really should set the tone of the game.
Yeah, Aiming's going to try and pick up as much farm as he can before that moment, because it feels like a race between the Xayah and the Corki for this next fight. Who's going to have the most bonus AD afterwards? BF Sword can be picked up for one of these guys. It could really change the tone. It's just so interesting when you get to talk about sort of both of these champions with very similar item spike timings. Corki a little bit lucky because you get a spike on your first item. Essence Reaver not as exciting as a single item. But after that, Zeal item plus Infinity Edge, certainly big for both of these characters.
And Aiming's able to cheat a little bit with the extra damage he receives from the Rakan.
Yeah, that's true.
The Zeke's Convergence, one of the reasons why Just the BF sword after the rapid fire cannon will make him pretty fearsome. He gets the 50% damage amp dot that applies on his Q, so in a line doing a lot extra damage in the team fight. Not a lot of champions use that R every team fight as a support, but certainly the Rakan is always going to be looking for the entrance on the quickness, and Afreeca looking for the mid lane turret. So there it is, 23 minutes in the game. They break the outer mid lane.
That was
turrets.
That was very free from Afreeca, though. With Faker going back, they must have known exactly what was going on. They knew that they could push their way up, and without the wave clear, not a lot of opportunities. Mowgli does know what's going on here, but are not able to start off a fight. They don't know where Faker is. Doesn't have the package, otherwise it's okay. And it feels like this game is on a knife edge still, Papa. We've only got approximately a 2,000 gold lead here for Afreeca, but SKT, you look at 2,000 gold with this type of composition that knows they're going to be able to out-damage their opponents as the game goes on, you're super happy.
And SKT presses their buttons on Baron, and it dies real fast with the Kalista and the Cho'Gath, both there to secure it next to the Smite.
That's when Mowgli looks at Baron and goes, I guess I'll have to smite at 4,000 health? Don't know.
It's a really tricky one with how much secure there is and Corki's insane damage output to cement that. That's kind of the headache that Afreeca have, is that they ever try to play bot side and they're not in range to engage. Oh boy, do SKT delete the Baron. So we complement Afreeca's decisive shot calling and rotation around the mid lane outer turret, but if SKT make that sort of a decisive play around the Baron, they're going to do it damn fast.
Yeah. Well, we've got a Cloak of Agility coming in for aiming, but he had to grab the QSS. Didn't actually think about that with the Impale on the Rift. You have to be able to pick up that item if you're the sole damage dealer for your team. And so aiming going to be behind. We mentioned the race towards Infinity Edge. Well, that means that Faker is certainly going to win that one. He does have a gigantic CS lead, but it's only going to be helped with the fact that aiming is priced in to grabbing that one.
They only need 2 of them. They need one on their support as well, I would say. Otherwise, TuSen can just be picked and die before he even gets to use the quickness. Those 2 have QSS. Everyone else is a beefy tank, so
yeah, not too
you'll have to accept that you're likely to be pulled in.
Yep, if you're a Sion, a Zac, or a Galio, you're pretty happy to be pulled into the back line. Lane and line are really screwing with both of us today, Papa.
And aiming definitely did some nice damage onto the Cho'Gath, and that's a flash down on Cho.
Yeah, so QSS be damned. He still does some damage.
With such a tense moment. You outlined it a couple of minutes ago. It will not change. The Inferno will probably be the side of a fight. For now, Afreeca peeling around the Baron. They are clumped up.
Well, they're looking to try and go in on Blossom to start this one off, but TuSen gets the quickness into the back line, and that's going to be Kuro heroically entering and picking up the first kill of the fight. Actually, the second as Wolf. The Catfish had already fallen, and no time is wasted. Mowgli slingshotting himself onto the purple worm, and Afreeca looking to put the first few nails into this coffin.
And it was such a great 1-2 punch where they blew the flash of the Cho'Gath, and they even had positioning on the hero's entrance behind the front line of SKT. They zoned so well, they controlled space so well, and Afreeca richly deserved the 26-minute Baron.
Oh, absolutely outstanding. Let's have a look at it again.
Remember that Cho'Gath is out of position. The Rakan goes into the backline at the same time the hero's entrance is used deceptively early to zone space. Bang and Faker both have to get out of the fight instantly. They do no damage at all. So Afreeca just control what is a very narrow corridor supremely well and earn the Baron.
Yeah, and that has to go to Kuro there as well, because he timed his heroic entrance exactly when TuSen had gone in with the grand entrance. So the double entrance, meaning that he's going to be put there even if TuSen goes back.
If the hero's entrance was closer to Baron, then there would have been no threat on Faker and Kalista. Kalista would have kept a flash. Faker wouldn't have had to Valkyrie out. There would have been a lot more damage output. But in that small second after the grand entrance, that was the time the trigger was pulled. And now Afreeca have a big lead and probably will just get this Inferno free unless SKT really see something they like.
Yeah, positioning around here, going to Afreeca at the beginning, but that is a big old Baron of Command minion heading towards this inner turret top side. There is a lot of pings onto the vision that SKT put down. And with the package, SKT might be feeling better. Infinity Edge is done, remember, onto Faker.
Oh, there's definitely a team fight that SKT wins.
Oh, yeah.
There is certainly one where they have the item timings to be able to punish the side of Afreeca. The Hero's Entrance goes wide, and it's just one by one, getting focus fire by the Kalista and the Corki. They will die. Speaking of the Corki.
Yeah, trying to get the pick out here is the unstoppable onslaught. Cowards. Makes his exit.
Cowardly exit, but a strong one.
Yep, could be in trouble, but he is actually going to use the Impale onto Mowgli. He doesn't actually care. He's just going to pop out, aiming, flashing over the wall to pick up these kills, and Wolf going to get critted to the face. Mowgli heading in. Stretch Armstrong going to pick up a whole host of CC, and he doesn't even go down to the Bloblets. Afrika are team fighting out of their minds today.
And unfortunately, Skarner is just allowing there to be positioning on a Galio ultimate every time, trying to gap close the Zac to his team. Unfortunately, Hero's Entrance comes in, aiming confident enough to flash over the wall, aiming a trainee of SK Telecom T1 in previous seasons on the practice team. Gets the unlikely start against his old organization, having a great start, and there is going to be the inhibitor turret broken at 29 minutes.
Absolutely incredible. 29 minutes is about sort of the end of the timing where you're going to feel strong as this comp, but now that they have a lead like this, it's just closing this one out. But let's have a look at it again. Why grab the Zac?
He was looking for just any target. He would have got the call to initiate, but unfortunately for him, positioning great for Kuro. By the time the Skarner gets out, he's on low health. Aiming does have the balls to flash over and gets the profit as well as multiple members go down. Antara just caught in the strife, no way for the Cho'Gath to exit, still doesn't have flash. So time and time again, the Galio zoning control, the amount of control there is in terms of zones. Faker and Bang have their items, none of them have been able to get near a kill just because they've been zoned out of damage again and again.
Yeah, Kuro as well. I mean, his heroic entrances have been absolutely fantastic. The dude's sitting on 5 items here. Zhonya's has done Liandry's, the most recent item to head into his back pocket. 6-0 is the kill score. A couple of Infernal Drakes. Afrika feeling absolutely fantastic with a 7,000 gold lead. And this is when SKT are going to start sweating. How do they stall this to the point where they can win a fight? Because if they face check like this, well, Wolf's dead. Aiming's going to easily pick that one up, but that's exactly what Afrika have now built up for themselves.
Certainly, and the AP on the Galio is undeniable. 4 AP items already complete. He is going to one rotation Bang and Faker at this point in the game. So Wolf walks up, he dies instantly. That's just the reality of being a support. Turn to mid lane. They already have the mid lane inhibitor turret down, so they're going to keep pushing up, and Kayn continuing just ulting to zone away. First inhibitor of the game should go the way of Afrika around 31 minutes.
Yep, still waiting on Wolf. You can see Kuro, I mean, yes, he's got 4 AP items. 3 of those have health, and the other one has armor, so he's still deceptively tanky against the damage, especially out of Bang. But with a health bar like that, it is daunting having to try and fight him, and he does so much damage as well.
Faker close to his 4th item. Close to being supremely fed, but will it matter? Can Faker get a kill involvement in this game when Afrika have been so good at controlling space? We've seen a couple of games in a row where we've had double huge damage threats be zoned out of damage by beefy tanks like the Zac and the Galio. Sion certainly no stranger to that. They've zoned supremely well. There is now double Gargoyle Stone Plate and a Gargoyle on the Rift for the side of Afrika. That means it's going to take a long time to get through the front line, even before the items are complete for Bang. He does not have the Lord Dominik's regard he desperately needs.
Oh, yes. Oh, man. A little bit ironic that both of the Lord Dominik's regard, both of the stone plates are not on the Gargoyle. Unfortunate. And Tara probably wanted to build up one for himself, but decided to go for the Abyssal Mask.
Faker has 407 CS at 32 minutes into the game. He's had no threat. He's just been farming against the Galio. The team fight impact from the Galio cannot be denied here. It's very much how the matchup goes. Both of them doing better than expected, but Faker, he just wants to kill someone, but doesn't have the safety to do so because of the incoming threat of all the damn tanks on the side of Afrika.
Aiming as well. He's got his last Whisper. Lord Dominik's could be coming in for him as well, unless he wants to pick up the Mortal Reminder to deal with potentially the Grey Health coming out of Wolf. He will be one of the first targets they are going to be locking down.
And they know who the MVP is. Kuro says, well, I guess I'm leashing for you, Aiming, who has 3 items, the last Whisper, and now the blue buff.
Well, Frozen Heart done here for Kayn as well. This guy's got so many tank stats. True Damage going to be going through it if Untara does manage to get the feast down, but I just think that there's too many targets that he needs to feast in these team fights. And the whole game plan here for SKT just didn't account for them falling this far behind. 8,000 gold, 33 minutes in, and Afreeca just waiting this last 24 seconds for the Baron to turn up on the map once again.
It's been so interesting because the early game went better than expected for SKT, and then when it came to the need to be decisive instantly, we got it out of Afreeca. Their team fought better than any of us could have been predicted with subs in the roster, 2 subs based on their earlier roster. Looking for the pick onto Mowgli, might just be caught.
Yeah, Wolf is going to devour him, but the hero's entrance comes down, and Afreeca Freaks, this is exactly what they wanted! And Tara, he's going to get kidnapped straight into the back line, and Keen picks up the kill. Toosin goes down very low, but that was all orchestrated by the Afreeca Freaks.
And another fight where Faker and Bang basically do no damage because their front line is just completely evaporated. Blossom looking for the steal. I don't think he's going to get it.
He's going to get onslaughted, as Keen is just going to get him out of here. The Baron falls very, very easily. Afreeca Freaks, this has honestly just been a beautiful lesson in how to play around power spikes and how to play around exactly when you want to be fighting. Their orchestration of team fights and their execution has just been phenomenal.
Yeah, we're going to see the replay here. They think they have the pick onto Mowgli, but by the time Faker and Blossom join, we've seen this so many times. Zac first controlling space, then the hero's entrance, and Faker and Bang, they can only walk one direction. It's away after a couple of rockets. Very little they can do in these sort of fights, and I think we have to reevaluate some of these 2-threat comps or higher threat comps against something like Galio Zac. Because Kalista famously in the past always struggled against super tanks. She wants to go for Ren sets. Any champion with Hurricane does suggest that. And Kalista's 2 times in a row have been able to do no damage to Zac Galio Sire.
Yeah, and Bang actually went for the extended teamfight style build as well when that hasn't been what he's been able to get into. In goes Toosin, the quickness is there, everyone's evaporating. Wolf, I'm not even sure he was in the fight beforehand. He started off dead as a Featherstorm. He's going to lock down a triple kill for aiming. He's looking for a quadra, but he's actually not going to join in on this one. He wants to win the game. He's got his eyes on the prize. And Afreeca Freaks, 13-0 in the kills. This is a slaughter.
Aiming is just killing people where they stand instantly with all his damage amps. They're going to go for the close, and there's nothing Bang can do.
Absolutely not. As soon as the Xayah gets in here, it's going to be all she wrote, and there goes the Nexus. Afreeca Freaks continue their domination of SKT in a glorious Game 1. Man, the SKT fans really starting to scratch their heads in the audience here, Papa Smithy, because Afreeca Freaks really had a schooling in that game.
They pulled the execution when they needed to flawlessly, and Bang especially could only watch. Kalista ended the game. 0 kills, 0 deaths, 0 assists. There was nothing she could do. The damage numbers will not be impressive because the execution on the teamfight made it impossible for SKT to focus down a tank, chomp him down, silence him, and make it 5v4. It was 5v4 the way of Afreeca before Cho'Gath could even get his rupture going.
Yep, and if that game had have lasted, you know, say 15 minutes longer, 10 minutes longer, something like that, maybe you'd start talking about SKT finding their way back in, but it just wasn't the case. Afreeca never leaving that door open more than an inch, and when they did, it was because they wanted to.
And the irony shouldn't be lost that SKT just lost to a 1-threat Galio comp. That's what SKT couldn't win with at the start of the season, the Sivir Galio comps. This time the Xayah Rakan comes in, and this Xayah was doing insane damage.
Yeah, Mowgli as well. I mean, have to hand it to him. Just farmed things out in the early game and then started the fights when they needed to. But the level of coordination, target selection, the zoning that was being done by all of these tanks from Afreeca Freaks, we spoke about the fact that we weren't sure who was going to be shot calling for this team. Seems like the whole team is a hive mind right now.
I feel like Kuro and Toosin were definitely pulling their weight. Super decisive when they needed to be. Better than expected in the mid game, and there was no late game.
Yep, and they were exactly the two that were doing most of that work as well, so I'm glad that you bring that one up, Papa. You can see some pretty happy faces on the side of the Afreeca Freaks. aiming as well. I mean, this is 3 games in a row that he's had a brilliant performance.
And against a team that never elevated him to the starting roster. They did not stick with aiming.
Yeah,
he looked for opportunities elsewhere, and now he gets an opportunity to stick it to his old organization.
They need to keep it going, though. If we remember anything from the Afreeca Freaks, it's the fact that Game 2 is pretty much a wild card most of the time. That is what's going to be coming up just after a short break. Guys, Afreeca Freaks versus SKT. I don't think we've seen the end of SKT. And we'll see what's going to happen in Game 2 after a short break. Don't go anywhere.